So again, a lot of the early TV shows began on radio. I think I've said this about 50 times, but I'm not done. I'm going to say it again and show you some examples. Okay. Well, TV's first superstar's real name was Mendel Berlinger, and his showbiz name was Milton Berle. You already saw in the history of media some examples of him. I'm just going to refresh your memory. His TV show was sponsored totally for a number of years by Texaco. There were no other advertisers on it, and it was really set up like a vaudeville show. I mean, it wasn't even, I guess it was radio, like a radio variety show, but they did it in a theater in front of a curtain. And in fact, that's what, right up till Ed Sullivan and beyond that, Sonny and Cher show, etc., they would be in a theater, Carol Burnett, with an audience. And in fact, think about it, even late night shows and things like that have audiences, but and are kind of variety shows in their own way. But there he was with but he had a curtain. It was like a theater, like a play. And you remember the Texaco guys standing in front, their little Texaco outfits, singing about how great Texaco was. And then they introduced Milton Berle, who is in drag as a June bride, coming out with this little chubby guy he says he's going to marry. And you may recall that video. So Milton Berle was this outrageous guy, and in a way is kind of the Howard Stern of his age, kind of being naughty and funny, and people would, I think it was a little before my time, folks, but would gather around the water cooler and talk about the crazy stuff that he did. But in 1948, 191,000 TV sets. 8 years later, 21 million TV sets, and a lot of that thanks to programs like the Texaco Star Theater. So I'm going to now open up the link to show you some other classic TV shows that started out as radio programs, just to make the point one more time. Okay. Okay. And there's a lot of crap on this page. Oh, my Lord. They're bopping me and bipping me every which way they can. So, some examples. I Love Lucy, hugely popular TV show in the 50s. Lucille Ball, who was a film actress, kind of a B-list film actress in Hollywood, was on a radio show called My Favorite Husband, and she moved it to TV. But guess what? She began her own studio and produced the program herself. The studio was called Desilu Studios, and the show starred Lucille Ball and her real-life husband, Desi Arnaz. And that show started in 1951. Still a classic comedy show. Superman. Before there were films of Superman, it was a radio show. First the comic book, right, everybody? Then the from DC Comics. Same as Batman from DC Comics. I was a comic book kid, but I was in the years when Marvel was kind of breaking out. So anyway, those were always my favorites. But anyway, Superman was on the radio for 11 years, and the guy who did it on the radio had a great voice for it, but he was 43 at the time the TV show started, so they cast George Reeve, who was a C-list Hollywood actor. He has a bit part in Gone with the Wind, for example. But Kellogg's, the sponsor of it, Superman, stuck with it when it went to TV. Eat your Kellogg's cereal, and you too will be. Gunsmoke was on the radio. And when it went on TV, as you can see here, it ran for 20 seasons. It was on radio 9 years before it got on TV. And it was broadcast in prime time, everyone. So for a while there in the 60s, particularly, Westerns were primetime TV shows, 1 hour long TV shows. Those were the days. All in black and white, pretty much, particularly, of course, at the beginning. Another one, this one you've definitely never heard of, The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. Ozzie Nelson was a band leader, leading a big band, playing swing music. And he and his wife Harriet, who was a singer, started on the radio, and then, as you can see, we're on the Red Skelton show, but then ended up being on TV with a very popular show in the 60s. And their son, Ricky Nelson, was an early kind of rock and roll star. And you've never heard of them, and you probably never will again, but they were good in their day. Dragnet is another one that started in radio and then went to TV in 1951. Jack Benny is another one you've, I'm sure, never heard of. Jack Benny, and I don't remember his real name, but he was another one who had a little more complicated, birth-given name than Jack Benny, but he was a very much beloved character, starting on the radio and then going to television for 15 years, 260 episodes. Perry Mason started on the radio and then went from radio to TV. Guiding Light was a soap opera. And in those days, what happened was Procter & Gamble, manufacturer of Tide detergent and Ivory liquid and Dawn dish detergent, Head and Shoulders, and lots of other things, started producing their own programs to run, particularly during the daytime, to reach housewives via radio in the 30s and 40s and 50s, and then via TV. And because the target audience for their products was, to a large degree, women who stayed at home and took care of the house and their kids, which is what they did to quite a degree in those days. Anyway, Guiding Light went from radio to TV in 1952 and was on air for, oh my Lord, 57 years during the daytime. Lone Ranger is another one, same thing. So just a few examples. Okay. Thank you, folks. Now you can go away, and you can go away. And let's get back to our friend Milton. So I'm going to stop now, and you're going to see, about 10 minutes of early TV commercials, the earliest ones. TV really started getting in the swing of things by the end of the 40s, and with 25 million households with TVs. So you see what these advertisers are doing now to take advantage of this visual medium. And it's mostly going to be in black and white, but not all. So you'll see a bunch of commercials, most of them fairly long length. And actually, after that, you're going to look at more content. This is where I've talked about this once already. I found a source for the most, I guess you could say, influential culturally TV series from each decade, starting in the 50s, and it's a lot of content. Each one of the videos is 12 or 13 minutes long. If I tell you don't look at it, I suppose most of you won't even bother, and I suppose in a way you can't be blamed. You're busy people. But maybe now that your things have changed and we're doing this all online, and maybe you have a little more time and you would like to look at these things. I think they're worth looking at. Am I going to ask an exam question about one of these things specifically? Which are the popular shows in the 60s? No. I think you should look at it, though. And I actually looked at all of them. And the shows they chose are really good, interesting shows. You're just going to see snippets, a couple of minutes of, 10 different TV series from each decade. And anyway, it may be the only time you look at this content, and I really would like you to do it, and I hope you do. See you on the other side of a long chasm of content.